bunch of you here and people still coming in. I'm Risa Denenberg. I'm one of the co-founders and editors of Headmistress Press. And we're here today to celebrate the winner and the finalists of our 2020 Charlotte Mew chapbook contest. Our readers are going to read from their books or from other poetry, whatever they choose. And I will be reading from one of our finalists who is not here today. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about Charlotte Mew. So I'm going to share her with you. So I'm reading from her card. She is also she is a lesbian poet, trading card poet. We have sets of these and we sell them at our store. We've been doing this since 2015. And so we got a lot of lesbian poet trading cards. So you could check out our store if you wanted to see them. But Charlotte Mew was one of the poets that was in our first set. And this is what is on the back of her card. I'm just reading it to you. Charlotte Mew, an English poet born in 1869, died by her own hand in 1928, tormented and inconsolable, having lost her whole family to the cemetery or lunatic asylum. She lived in the repressive era of Oscar Wilde trial and the obscenity trial for The Well of Loneliness, and her love for women was unrequited, even publicly mocked. Apparently, Mew burned most of her poems, but Virginia Woolf wrote in response to Mew's first book, which was titled The Farmer's Bride, that she is, quote, unlike anyone else, unquote. According to Eve Boland, Mew's words about Emily Bronte apply to Mew as well, and this is her quote. When we first read these songs, we are brought face to face with the woman who wrote them. And when once we know them and have been haunted by their rebellious and contending music, it will not be possible to forget. So that's the woman we honor with this contest every year. And that is the way we feel about the poets that are chosen by our judge to be published for 2020, the ones who are here with us today. So I'm going to start by introducing our first reader for today, Katherine Fallon, and I'm going to put her book cover up. So bear with me while I do that. There it is. So Katherine Fallon is the author of Demoted Planet, and she's a finalist for the 2020 Mew Prize. I went back and looked at what I jotted down about these poets when I first read their manuscripts, and what I said about hers was mysterious, lyrical, elegiac, with dark metaphors. These are things I know because I asked about Katherine, and she told us. Katherine came out at age 18 in rural South Carolina, following her big sister, who is also a lesbian, and maybe she's even here today. Since her college years, she has lived in 7 cities and 5 states. As a farmhand for a grass-fed cattle ranch in Colorado, she ate from her favorite cow, named Rorschach. I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, these days she spends at least an hour a day doing crossword puzzles and makes miniature food out of clay. While she is not afraid of snakes or spiders, she is afraid of the ocean deep, and her favorite animals are camels and anteaters. And I'm also going to read you her bio. Don't do that. Katherine Fallon attended Bryn Mawr College, received her MFA from Sarah Lawrence in 2006. Since she began submitting work in 2018, she has released 2 chapbooks, The Toothmaker's Daughters, Finishing Line Press, 2018, and Demoted Planet, Headmistress Press, finalist for the Charlotte Mew Prize. Her poems have appeared in Agni, Colorado Review, Juked, Meridian, Foundry, and Best New Poets 2019, among others. She has received nominations for both the Best of the Net and Pushcart prizes. She is the lead poetry editor at Mayday. To move the screen down. She is the lead poetry editor at Mayday and reads for Pank. She teaches composition and women's gender and sexuality studies at Georgia Southern University and shares domestic square footage with 2 cats and her favorite human who helps her zip her dresses. So before I turn the stage over to Katherine, I'd like everybody, if you would, to turn your videos off. I think most of you have. There's a lot of people here today, which is just absolutely lovely, but I don't want to go beyond the bandwidth that the Zoom can tolerate. All right, so I'm stopping sharing and I'm turning myself mute, and take it over, Katherine.
Okay. Hi there. My name is Katherine Ballen. I'm really, really grateful to be here. I wanted to say congratulations to Jillian for her win. And I actually bought the books of the other poets and read them last night when I couldn't sleep. And I really enjoyed all 3. So I wanted to say that before I got started. So I'm going to read some poems that are from manuscripts that are in progress that have not been picked up. And then I'm going to read poems from the 2 chap books that Risa mentioned, and mostly obviously from the one that is being showcased today, which is Demoted Planet. So I'm going to start with a poem called Kenai, which is a location in Alaska. According to the guide, had my photos been better, we could have identified any of the whales as individuals by their tail flukes. Lobed and dark as glass and water, their undersides were stained white, with markings peerless as our own fingerprints. Secrets they chose to tell not to us, but to the sleet, which called them up, which called for the force of the thrust of an airplane engine. Understand, we needed something human in order to understand. Knowing nothing and never having followed anything which could be seen from far away, difference was lost on us, and we couldn't stop shivering, telling ourselves how strong we were for facing weather. We had come so far to see them breach among the dying glaciers, which growled like predators before calving. The whales alone were unafraid of the, though we should have understood, the violent shed was sensible, effortless, a letting go. Toothless whales have 2 blowholes. They have to think to breathe. This is the poem from the Best New Poets, which I wouldn't typically advertise like this, except that I found out last night while reading it that my new friend who I met through Mayday is in it as well. So I got really excited about that. Robin Gow. Okay, letters from the farm. 1, catbird at the window, black-capped, unexpected this far west. I'd never have recognized it but for its crying mimicry. Sounds like, isn't. You didn't tell me they nest near ground. Little potential to plummet and vulnerable like an anthill to the footstep. Longer now since you loved me, then you loved me. The difference stretches narrowly on, deepens. Emptiness bright as beak shine. Expectations tight cup, loose dirt, a home. 2, this week in the city where we met, a woman was strangled with her bra and left just where, just how she fell. I hear nothing from you. That girl who lassoed you like a calf kept you like one, quartered. You stayed close, devoted, hid your pretty throat from me as though I'd been the blind and careless one. We were given a chance to love, so I did. You wouldn't know a gift, even if. 3, at noon, a little girl was swept into the canal behind me like so much dirt beneath a rug, her body a secret the baffles will keep. I heard the sirens but knelt, back turned, willingly unaware. You can't imagine my grief. I'd been winnowing the greening down to what might grow tall and wanted. I had just learned to be happy. 4. In the field where bone became stone long before I knew you, a flock of sparrows sits quiet as courts between plumed grasses. My footsteps disturb them into a swarm. Startled by small birds I've startled, I stand still and let my loss set in. The heart slows, the hands unfurl to cup the air in petition. 5. What of the mustard tucked into a bed of cauliflower, or the magpie's dive bomb wingspan fanned across the rimrock? My boot leaks, sticks fast into the overwatered field, and I know I was mistaken. None of my new learning is intended for you. I approach the land I keep alone and like a storm, hand raised above the brow to see far off what's coming. Closet. You married me beneath the tree from which the tire swing still hangs whitely. I wore a black dress, which gave me a waspish thorax, which bore my ghostly legs, and promptly ruined it on the wash cycle. Its fastenings no longer fasten. New grief, old dress, and this time-worn, abysmal closet. We'll be married until they say we are not. I'd break all of the bones to be safe with you in public. North Rim. 1. You took me there to help me grieve his loss, and remembering this from your own childhood, told me to watch intently for the exact moment the copse of pine ends and the canyon is revealed. It was a proper chasm, a reckoning, a goddamn fever dream. It made us into insects. 2. I'm not the only one to wonder about those who first encountered the canyon, minding their own wretched business as they crossed that dusty terrain, stretches too vast to possibly behold. Disappointment, surely an understatement. Accessory to failed passage, the earth's jagged wound likely meant death. I felt the marrow ache of their bodies at the very sight of it, and still, they must have marveled. 3. We stayed in a cabin surrounded by walking paths, so close to the edge. A stain on one ceiling tile resembled fast food's Wendy, but ghoulish, pigtailed Joker on high. Windows open, all suffocating night, legs entwined, hike tired, hearing voices as strangers passed, unknowing. We stared at the laminate wall, at the goblin ceiling tile, until one of us rolled onto the other. I don't remember the sex, but what it taught me, that silence is possible regardless of threshold. Next day, we gazed into the earth's violent fissure and said nothing. Chasm, another open mouth, never filled. So now I'm going to read from my first chapbook, which is called The Toothmaker's Daughters. It was put out by Finishing Line Press in 2018. Some context that you probably need for the next round of poems, both from this chapbook and this chapbook, is that my parents actually did make false teeth for a living. So you're going to be hearing a lot about my parents and a lot about teeth. And I will explain anything that needs to be explained. So, apprenticeship. Father taught us that teeth bloom like flowers, spiraling outward from a tight bud, or like a lady's skirt mid-dance. But he showed me with his fist, held so closely to my face that I was forced to watch it break, a pale and noiseless fusillade. And this one, the further context you need is that archaeologists who were studying the bodies of people who died during the potato famine in Ireland, that they could tell based on nitrogen levels in people's teeth the points in time at which they were nourished or not. So when they went through famine and when they were actually able to consume enough food to not have their bodies eat themselves. So that's what you need for this poem. The Toothmaker's Daughter, Learning to Eat. Teeth as ghost-written journals. You can see that once I was one of 4, and later I belonged as half of a set of 2. Candlesticks flanking supper, a pair of soft-soled shoes. I was loved once and fed plenty. You will recognize feast, 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 and after feast, famine. Page your book. This book is essentially an elegy for my father. So again, a lot about teeth that you might hear and grief in general. So it's a good time. The first one you also need a little bit of context for. It's called Cusp of Carabelli. And that is an heritable trait that not everyone has. And it's an additional cusp on your very back molars. And it was discovered by someone named Carabelli a long, long time ago. But most people don't know it exists. Cusp of Carabelli. I dreamt our parents gave a lecture we expected to be on teeth. Mother with the blue-orange blowtorch and a violent spinning crucible. Father with the soft-tongued secret of the cusp of Carabelli. But mother didn't speak, and dad wrote endless code on the green board. He said, "Now then, doesn't that make sense?" And we agreed. No one's ever liked to disappoint him. He clapped his hands and a cloud of white dust spread through the room. "And that's how it happens, my little ones," he said, pointing to his tidy characters. "That's how and why everything decays." Elegy for my father. My father and I collided in the downstairs hallway most nights. We never were able to sleep. We'd sit at that awful lion-footed walnut table they were both so proud of, leaf missing, a perfect circle that could never again grow larger, and, perhaps more troubling, couldn't ever seem to close completely. Gathering crumbs we loosed with butter knives, evenings we sat together as a family, eating. Those late nights, my father drank whole milk, and talked while I drew my finger awkwardly along the whorls of the wood, his face too much like someone I knew to look right into. There wasn't much to say then. He was 40, and I was curling my hair daily until the singed waft of it filled the bathroom. Still, we kept vigil for hours without lighting the room. The refrigerator opened, closed, opening, closing. Just a portal we could have climbed through, together, but one by one. Revelry. I watched from my window while tall, thin men danced through the trash fire in our backyard, hollering as they climbed up and down the flaming back steps they'd just replaced. What filth I heard, their vowels all syrup, their feet glowing with flame. Beers in hand, they scuffed against the grass to put themselves out. I searched and found my father in shadow, present, but hardly a man, if this is what makes them. Next day, I woke to the quiet hiss of the garden hose. He was soaking the charred earth, afraid the smolder had burned all night without him. Dark Side of the Moon. Everyone could see your Pink Floyd t-shirt, but not what we nestled below the half-shut lid without the undertaker's knowing. Full ounce of quality weed and a teddy bear so loved the stuffing had dissolved, leaving a floppy, pilled exoskeleton behind. Your skin, however it could, looked like skin. Eyes glued shut, I'm sure, but it looked more like sleep than... I had waited you out until you expired, as you were meant to, and I wept as I was meant to. Days passed, and I understood grief to be a room I had entered, with provisions. Wandering Star. Father, you are finally the ghost elephant, now the vacant boat, now the spot on the wall where a portrait used to hang, brighter than its surrounds, footprint of a vanishing. You are the cockless dawn, the cloudless sky, the drought-blighted farmland of the Midwest. Deep in earth, though not of it at all, you are black hole material. Demoted planet, imploded star, I wake because you taught me of landings. And this is the last one that I'll read. It's also the last in the book. It's called Replicant. And it's a hard one for me, so we'll see how this goes. 1. In my latest dream, your chest rose and fell while we counted the seconds between breaths with a literal stopwatch, which made it seem real because that is what made your death real years ago. The counting kept on, and you didn't. 2. So you vacated again, and I counted my own breath, tracing it from gaping mouth to cold, broke open breastbone to stomach, that putrid, mutinous lagoon. Then what ought to have alerted me to falsehood, your belly inflated again, your sternum rose, and you fought the rails of your coffin, sat upright, a jack-in-the-box escaping the horror dream I could not. Though was I trying? 3. You never did open your eyes, but I knew the panic was not mindless, not the thrashing of the cliché undead. You were with me again, flesh and bone, and you were suffering. Your blood bubbled like an untended pot pooling at the ears. You bruised like the skin of an overripe pear. 4. I could not hold you down, momentarily restored to the bare paw strength of the times you built fires and took your own damn self to the bathroom. Back when your haunches looked like haunches, not chair legs, inside your jeans. Back when you wore jeans. I quit trying. At last, you died again, which was the 3rd time that felt like the 1st, and the 12th, also the 44th. 5. So much is left of you, but none of it human. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just lovely. I want to do a couple of things. One, I want everybody to go ahead and unmute themselves and show your faces and give some love to Kat.
Do it, Kate Fallon! Yeah. Wonderful.
All righty. So thanks for that wonderful reading. I'd like to let people know, and I'll remind you again, you can buy these books at our store, and we'll put the link in the chat. And we do appreciate your buying our books from us, but you can also buy them from the authors. I'm sure that they'd be happy to sell them to you too. And you can see our lesbian poet trading cards at the store. So I'm going back to the screen share and going to show you the cover of S.G. Huerta's book, The Things We Bring With Us, Travel Poems. She will be our next reader. And these are some things that I can tell you about her. First of all, she goes by the pronouns they, them. And at 22, she may be the youngest poet to be a finalist for the Charlotte Mew Prize. I didn't look back, but I think it's true. When I first read this manuscript, I deemed it clever and wise. Vicky Now, the judge for the Mew Prize, called these poems, quote, capable of turning your inflamed heart into snow or a Renaissance painting or the Catholic Church, unquote. They wrote their first poem at the age of 10 and are currently in the midst of writing a sonnet a day. Their book was inspired by a study abroad trip to Spain in 2018, attending a writers' conference in Italy in 2019, and travels through the US. SG's muses include Eileen Miles, who is also one of our trading card poets, and the band Modern Baseball, which I had never heard of, but I think I like them. I listened to a couple of their songs. So here's her bio. S.G. Huerta is a Chicano poet from Dallas. They are pursuing their MFA at Texas State University and live in Texas with their cat Lorca. S.G. is the author of the chapbook, The Things We Bring With Us, Travel Poems, finalist for the 2020 Headmistress Press Charlotte Mew Prize. Their work has appeared or is forthcoming in Perhappened Mag, Kissing Dynamite, Lavender Review, and various other places. So I want everybody to go ahead and click your video off again, just because there's so many of you here and I don't want to lose Zoom. And I am turning stop share off and turning things over to SG. Take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Risa. Very happy to see so many of y'all. Thank y'all for coming, and glad to share this space with these other amazing poets. I also kind of wanted to dedicate this reading to my parents, my mom who is here right now, and my dad, my late father, whose birthday was a couple days ago. So this is just like an honor of them and their support throughout my career as a poet and whatnot. Yeah, so my book, I just want to show y'all how it looks physically. So the first poem I'm going to read is the first poem out of the book, which I named the manuscript after. It's called The Things We Bring With Us. I'm sorry, let me just real quick. Okay. White strangers often give me money for traveling for work, for barely functioning while gay and brown, for writing poems about gayness and brownness, never explicitly. I accept the conditions. I mute my colors. I shove every bright thing away into a suitcase, fitting a lifetime into a carry-on. When told, I jump at the chance to leave, to experience marginalization elsewhere, to really have to take my pills in case I lose my mind too far this time from my sister's reach, to see if I can see a future, a wife, a job in another city, a city with light and lighter baggage. Thank you, Jillian. So my next poem, so like as the title suggests, travel poems, these are, sorry about that, these are based around Spain and Italy and New York and Texas, where I'm from. So I'm gonna jump ahead to Italy for a poem called A Day in the Vatican, which is about my father and I. A Day in the Vatican. You inherit nothing from your father, apart from Catholicism and bipolar. You ditch the former and smoke the latter out. Meet where it began, formally. The first Holy Father buried below the Basilica's altar, footsteps falling with your father's, following his path into the side chapel to say a quick Hail Mary or two, his path to alcoholism that reveals itself upon leaving the Basilica, approaching a vendor, buying 2 beers, downing them both while greeting 2 nuns. Dangerously close, Chad Davidson writes, as if there were another kind of nearness. The nuns respond in English, the beers a normality, expected for the duo standing a foot apart, one smiling. I'm trying real hard to read these slowly, so my apologies if I'm fast. So we're gonna jump to, there's a section in the book that's in between that just like didn't necessarily fit in, but I feel like expressed like the feeling of being in between. It's called Love Should Be Love. There is a coffee shop in Roswell, New Mexico, where we stopped along the way to Santa Fe, recommended by Karina, where I bought your iced latte, and later a postcard for your little sister, because I so desperately need her approval and yours. You felt safe enough to hold my hand in yours, icy, in that UFO museum. Rows and rows of doctored photos, fakes, phonies. What if we could stay in that postcard? Happy family of aliens, not standing out in Roswell or anywhere, not breaking back home. And again, switching around just so y'all can get like a general sense of every, I guess, locale that I've written about. I'm going to read the final poem of the book, which is like the back home section. It's called We Didn't Cross the Border. Sorry, there's a cat in here having a lot of fun. Sorry you can hear that, but yeah, we didn't cross the border. I'm imagining a place I've never been, and a city in Nuevo León I visited once as a child, where my primos spoke English and my mother spoke Spanish. I don't want to spit in a tube, outline exactly how colonialism shaped me. My lighter but not light skin, dark eyes, darker hair. Manic depression and instability run through my veins. My father, Mexico-Americano, born in England, had no roots. Su necesidad, voluntad. By 20, I'd moved at minimum 13 times. I flourish in transit, never tied to Dallas skyscrapers and the bustling downtown my dad used to patrol, nor to the empty skies in Lubbock pressing down on me. Nothing flourishes on the paternal family land in Concepcion, south of Kingsville. No crops take root unless you count the nopal en el frente. Pre-1836, the land was likely as useless as it is now. Un burro named Jack who won't bray, 30 goats whose eyes glow at night. The promise, threat of an anglicized Llorona despite Kingsville's distance from La Agua. Esta no es poema. This is autoetnografía. My father was a runner in high school. We haven't stopped. So I'm gonna read about like 3 more from the book and then a couple of new things that I'm excited to share with y'all. Sorry, there's a cat on my list of what I'm gonna read. This next poem is a shout out to my Lubbock friends who are here and to my MFA friends that are also here. It's called Mangled Pigeons. Okay. My first Sunday back home from Spain, or back to West Texas at least, I saw a disembodied, bloody pigeon head by my mailbox. I always joked that I'd title a collection of poems about Lubbock, Mangled Pigeons, and other poems. I left my red Converse in Spain. My toes were sticking out. My disorder returned with me, though bipolar, never leaving. It carefully tucked itself into the worn insoles of my shoes I brought back, and TSA did not catch on. The whites of my new red Converse shine too brightly. The red is artificial, unnatural, especially when compared to that pigeon head by my mailbox. It's so weird doing this on Zoom. So this next one is about the poet Lorca. I'll just find it real quick. Okay, so there's an epigraph at the beginning. It's a quote by Lorca. It's in Spanish, but I'll translate it as well. It says, "Como no me he preocupado de nacer, no me preocupo de morir." And that was in an interview 2 months before his death. And it means, like, I wasn't worried about being born, I'm not worried about dying. And that, I guess, the irony of him saying that just right before he died was very impactful to me. Learning about him in that study abroad trip. So yeah, this one's called Finding Lorca. I was 19, finding that I could never love a man, and looking up at a statue of one whose words I could love. A man with a 19-year career stopped dead in its tracks, holding flowers on his 120th birthday, a dulling but not yet dead pink bouquet shrouded in greenery that somebody must have placed between his outstretched bronze arms and the outstretched wings of the bronze bird in his hands. A red rendering of Velázquez's Meninas waits a few yards behind him. Madrid a Federico Garcia Lorca, reads the inscription with a penciled-in tilde. He wasn't worried to be born. He wasn't worried about death. But looking up at him and living where he died, I can't help but fear, perhaps irrationally, I will have the same end. In Granada, I climbed to the top of the Mirador with another poet for a view of the Alhambra, a sight Lorca surely knew well before his execution. We argued about what ravine may be his resting place. The place doesn't matter. Atop this hill, looking out onto the top of another, I become that bronze bird. I'm going to switch to some newer stuff. In fact, very new. I finished this poem this morning, and I think this is an appropriate place to test it out. It's called They Don't Save Themselves at the End. I'm 7 years old, and my dad is removing a shard of glass from my now bleeding foot. There is not as much blood as I think there is in my overactive imagination. I have taken off my shoes at my cousin's graduation party and stepped on glass. My dad is not yelling at me, not this time. I am 7 years old, or maybe I am 22. Maybe I purposely stepped on the glass because I wanted him to save me. Maybe I wish I could learn to simply stop dancing where glass has been broken. I'm trying to give myself time between these to let it sit. It's so hard on Zoom. So this next one, some of my classmates will probably recognize. It's called I'll Stop Feeling Sorry for Myself Tomorrow. And there's an epigraph from a Paige Lewis poem that says, I'm the vice president of panic and the president is missing. I wonder if my dad ever imagined that I'd turn his absence into art, or at least try to. I conflate every bad thing that has happened to me with his actions. Exhibit A. After he left, my eardrum burst. I'm telling you, reader, I've carried the fear of my tympanic membrane becoming perforated again for over a decade. The new crackling in my ear didn't subside all weekend. On Monday, the doctor told me the eardrum is the fastest healing tissue in the human body. I don't want to fact check him. I still have scarring. I forgot to keep track of time, but I have a couple more for y'all. This next one is forthcoming in a Latinx Futurisms poetry anthology that I'm super excited to be a part of. It's about being American, but not necessarily proud of it. So it's called Ignorant American. I'm an ignorant American, a lost Chicana who listens to the Duolingo Spanish podcast because I forget how to converse with abuelita, my friends, myself, forgetting the shape and shade of my hands. I don't even know the word for shoulder, but I know the words estereotipo and opresión without spell check. I heard nobody calls themselves Chicana anymore. I am nobody. I am myself. Yo soy Joaquin, a politicized existence. I'm stuck in a cliche, dreaming of the day when I'm free to be nobody, inherently nothing más que yo. So this last one is forthcoming in Lavender Review. So very grateful to Miriam for accepting this poem. It's a super short one, but very close to me. It's called Poem in Which I Remember My Dad Bullying Me for Being a Lesbian. I once thought I was a girl and I liked girls and I still like girls, but don't call me a girl. Is this a poem or a confession? Does my dad know all now beyond the grave? I want to write a queer poem without his ghost reading it over my shoulder. I am somewhere between girl and other. I was never his daughter. And that is all I have for y'all, but thank you so much.
Thank you. SG, that was fabulous. I'm taking a second to have you open up and give SG some love. Sounds. Unmute.
Everybody's on mute. Everybody's
Woo! Woo! Yay!
Thank you all. You're a wonderful audience, and you've been. If the readers aren't paying attention, go back into the chat and see the love that you've been being given. And I also, I think I just did, or I'm going to put the store. I didn't. let's see. Oh, I'll do it in a minute. I have the wrong thing, but I wanted to give you our address so you could buy these books. I also want to take a minute to say that these wonderful covers were all designed by Mary Miriam with artists that she chooses. She's an expert in lesbian art, and she works with our poets to make sure that their books are designed in just a wonderful way. So I'm going to go back into screen share, and I'm going to put up Sarah Caulfield. And let me show you the cover of her book called Discomfort. Sarah can't be with us live today, and she sends her regrets. She's having some health difficulties, and she wanted the other readers to know she really loves their work. So I'm just subbing for her. I'm going to read a couple of her poems. When I first read her manuscript, I called it gorgeous. It made me cry. And Vicky Now, our contest judge, wrote that the poems in this book, quote, arrive into the world fully formed and without apologies, while retaining their eloquent richness and intellectual centrifugal innocence. Wow. Sarah graduated from the University of Cambridge with a degree in education with English and drama. Her work has appeared in Lavender Review, Indolent Books, Voicemail Poems, Lethe Press, and Two Penny Books, among others. Sarah's also the author of Spine, a chapbook that we also published, Headmistress Press published Spine in 2017. Some interesting things about Sarah. She's from Blackpool, Lancashire. Let me say that again, Blackpool, Lancashire, and has lived in Poland, Germany, Japan, and Korea, and currently lives in the UK. She's worked as a fast food server, children's mascot, art gallery attendant, Shabbos Goy, and as a teacher of English as a foreign language. So I'm going to put Sarah back up and read you from her book, Discomfort. I'm going to read a couple of poems. This one is Sapphic Ballad. Make sure I can move the screen. I'm sorry, I'm going to read from the book. Too many screens open. This is Sapphic Ballad. A man says if you fall in love with a writer, you can never die. He's trying to get you to sleep with him, offering you an imitation immortality, the reflection of you in his half-lit eyes. And you're saying, accept no substitutes. I'm the real deal, son, as the director calls cut again. A man says if you fall in love with the writer, you can never die. Here's the thing. If you fall in love with a writer, you will learn to retranslate all the facets of your meat. A writer will say how your angles are blades in the light, arrowheads pressing up from beneath the skin like a declaration of war, and your hip bones, hatchets she will flay herself live against, broken open by the tide of eyes and teeth. She will say how you made her remember she had a body, and you'll hear the resentment. She will say that's what made her look the second time. She'll say that is the silvery yarn that dragged her out of the Minotaur's lair on bleeding feet. And when it is over, she will craft a ballad of how hope martyred her wine-dark heart. It won't be remembered. It will be lost in the war, and that's what I'm putting my money on. There's usually a war. Maybe it'll survive, but it'll all be in fractures. They'll throw the bones like dice to make predictions about what she was saying when she said, there is gold dust in our eyes, and we cannot see the sand running out. People will look at the parentheses, which once cradled love stories, and say, take your best guess. Give it a shot. Go on, honey. If you fall in love with a writer, you can never die. And the second poem that I'm going to read from Discomfort by Sarah is Break My Bones. I want to be able to say the word dyke without choking around it, without falling backwards into a smaller version of myself, a decade old who only knew the word crunched like an apple core, like something gone rotten, that it was something to do with what women did with their mouths, and that was what made them something unclean. The second time I let a boy kiss me, I remembered waiting to feel something other than fear. Nothing more than a cellophane girl, put your eye right to me and I disappear. It's magic. Later, I cleaned him out of me, the slug of toothpaste winking up at me from the sink, glistening until the taste was gone. I longed to arrive at a point beyond shame, but the road uphill is made unstable. I am tearing out my own spine and calling it a Jacob's ladder, licking over the scars of old wounds so often they seem to open. They make themselves known with string, softly, newly wombed mouths under my tongue, given life, growing, crying of holy Palmer's kiss and communion wine, and the waiting reckonings I have yet to make, the makers I have yet to meet, the growing sense I will have to answer to my elders. Forgive me, I will say. I'm still plucking out the stitches. Let me stop sharing. There I am again. Sarah, that was, your poems are just so great. I really feel privileged to have had a chance to read them to you.
Hey, Sarah!
Woo!
Thank you, everyone. And our last reader today is the winner of the Charlotte Mew Prize for 2020, Jillian Ebersole. She claimed that the pandemic has made her uninteresting, but I disagree. So in her bio, she writes, Jillian Ebersole is a dancer and writer who explores the embodied experience of queerness in her poetry and choreography. In particular, their work explores queerness in relation to the structures of conservative religious upbringing. Jillian currently works for Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival. Her chapbook, The Water Between Us, was the winner of the 2020 Charlotte Mew Chapbook Prize. Vicky Now, the contest judge, said, these poems were born to break our hearts and are fearless in their candid vulnerability. There's a little more to the story. Jillian has performed on stages in Los Angeles, Denver, and Paris. She's a staff writer for London-based art collective Backtrack, as well as a guest columnist at the LA Dance Chronicle. And she says, I carry a notebook with me wherever I go. I paint all my bedrooms yellow. I only write with one specific type of pen. Coffee makes me sick, so I drink tea. I studied abroad in Paris, and the women wearing menswear definitely made me realize I couldn't run from my queerness anymore. So looking forward to hearing your reading, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Here's my book. And I'm really so thrilled to be here, and thank you for giving me space to read, and thank you to the other three poets who have been such lovely companions during this weird virtual time. I'm going to start with the first poem that I wrote in terms of chronology. So it's not the first poem in the book, but it's the beginning of what this book is. And it's called Exit Wounds. I left the church with half of my hope, a decent singing voice.
Jillian, wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can't hear you. Your sound is weird.
Weird. Okay, let me try something else.
You're too low.
How's this? Better?
That's it. That's better. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks for telling me. It's such a weird universe. All right, I'm starting with the first poem that I wrote in terms of chronology, but not the first poem in the book. So it's called Exit Wounds. I left the church with half of my hope, a decent singing voice, a closet full of dowdy dresses, 12 plastic rosaries, a confirmation saint to watch over me, and an unhealthy sense of guilt, given to me by a priest who asked if I'd participated in any inappropriate touching. At the time I cried, and now I grow nauseous at the irony of his accusation. God must have a sick sense of humor, giving humans a responsibility so fragile, yet we're children with buttered hands. Dishes slip from our grasp in the kitchen. It scares me to think I'll feel this much pain my whole life, which is perhaps an explanation for my appearance in the pews every Sunday. All right, my second poem that I'm going to read is called Annex Nocturne, and I wrote this poem early on in the pandemic, thinking about how little space I had and thinking about Anne Frank and how long she spent in how little space she had. Annex Nocturne. You see, the moon bleeds daffodils through the windows, drizzles butter on the wall at dusk, coughs up opal beads of light caught between the blinds. Ants crawl across the top of the love seat, where your toe indents remain on the arms from the nights you curled around a book. The moon noses the stale red wine on the counter and laps up blackberry gloam instead. Did you know the windowsill cactus is named Amy? She casts a lavender shadow on the floor and leans toward the stained yellow wall, oblivious to the moonlight. You'd probably ask if the ants need coats. And this poem is called I Don't Know the Names of the People Next Door. You never sang for me, did you? Did you think the bridge would separate us from curtains and mirrors and the 5 o'clock light that streams through the corner window? I will close the blinds again and count the crows on neighboring houses with people we do not know inside, clutching at their blankets. The fires are talkative and the snow quiet. The moment is only us and not us. We are never alone or as alone as we want to be. We fill the emptiness with music, let the radio blare on in the night. You know I can sleep through anything. The next poem is called Breakup Fish and Stolen Furniture. 10. In the bar, we both avoid eye contact. There are pride flags everywhere, and you pretend not to notice when I ask if I can take a few home, hang one on my porch, use another as a bedspread, wrap myself in a third after I shower. 9. Before the evening ends, we wander along the edge of a cliff. You grab my hand to keep me from falling, then abandon me to tumble down the dirt anyway. In Los Angeles, in France, on the quiet trails in Colorado, when you post on Instagram, I think about your hands and pray. 8. You like to hear about my research. There is a paper about a man who choreographs for ballet companies using blackface. Another about dance as gender performance. I don't tell you I am choreographing about you. There is a duet between two women who are afraid to touch each other. 7. 6 years is a long time and not at all. I fear you will always see me as a child. 6. Together, stuffed. I knew you would be the one to leave. I buy you vinyls and plane tickets. There would never be enough music to keep your attention. We took a drive to escape the goodbye. I hid everything I love in your dashboard. 5. Rainy porches, calling your name like I am unafraid, breathing in pollution as perfume. When the stars emerge from behind the clouds, we lie on the roof, catching the moisture in our joints, using the rain as an excuse to touch. 4. I've come to love your fidgeting. You pace around the kitchen while I collapse like a tired horse. You buy vegetables from the farmer's market, but leave them to rot. 3. Things we talked about. Opera, camping, how we felt about our siblings, avoiding coming out to our parents, how religion is both captor and captive, Enneagram compatibility, preferred type of pen, falling in love with straight women, Southwest Airlines. 2. Things we didn't talk about. Actually coming out. Instagram, where you sleep when you came to visit, overdoses. If I could hold onto your waist when we rode your motorcycle. Churches, how many of your friends you've dated, stubborn avoidance. 1. We can't forgive each other for the past. I stand outside your door, but still cannot bring myself to knock. All right, the next poem is called I Wish the Missing Was Symmetrical, and I borrowed this title from one of my friends who was talking about how missing is always asymmetrical. I wonder if you have ever checked our zodiac compatibility. I can't stop thinking about your blue eyes, peanut butter, and my last London fog. My tears are as bitter as Earl Grey, and my mind is cloudy. Do the stars align? Our coffee shop is closed, which means you are alone, making coffee barefoot in your kitchen. I used your bathroom the last time I was over, and I discovered we have the same face wash. Cut to a montage of domestic bliss. Miles away, I'm back to praying broken rosaries. I wish we were a circle instead of 2 points in time. I want roses, yellow ones, and I want you to hang a pride flag from your window. If I wasn't stained purple, I'd be stronger. All right, let me see. All right, this poem is called Cancer Season, and it's a sonnet, and it rhymes, which I hated originally, but I really love this poem because it's about one of my best friends. That year was the worst year of your whole life. So dark, you sunburned yourself on the beach to try to feel warmth again. Blister, strife. The holes outnumbered sea glass and peaches, and I could not devise a way to dig you out. You built toothpick gossip ladders. Those straw nothings crumbled, and dirt sprig tears could not make your eyeliner sadder. Wearing rainbow socks and hotel slippers, you now make tea in the kitchen at dawn. Pale skin under the moon, Faye's worshiper. The smile on your face no longer withdrawn. The peach pits and sunburn scars weren't wasted. We crave the things we have not yet tasted. And the last poem I'll read from my chapbook today is also about the same person, my best friend. It's called Best Friend. You talk to crows and always forget your sunglasses. You are a porcupine, prone to prickliness at the sight of a baby and the barista who always bungles your order. You leave your spines all over the apartment. a slammed door when the music is too loud. What is that awful smell when the bathroom isn't cleaned on time? You name all your plants after song lyrics. Shin bruise, morphine, Angela, and buy lip gloss every time you pick up a prescription at CVS. My hugs make you bristle, but you like my poetry. I have never laughed harder than on our couch, falling onto the floor. I pick your blonde hairs out of my laundry, soft strings of light. All right, I'm going to read some new ones that I've written recently. If you're familiar with the Catholic tradition, it's currently Lent, and Lent, I have a very complicated relationship with Lent, and so it generally leads to a lot of poetry. And so these are all recent. Amazing Grace. As a child, my brother's favorite animal was the manatee. We used to watch VeggieTales, and Larry the cucumber had one as a pet. All I knew of the Bible then was love. Every weekend in the pews, I sang at the top of my lungs, how sweet the sound of a child in church, but what makes a 6-year-old wretched? The distance between a virgin kneecap and the pavement, dirty fingernails, a hissy fit in an ice cream shop. A manatee made the front page last month, with the name of a fascist carved into its side. This is the straw that breaks my back. I once was lost and now I am more so. It's hard for me to read the Bible without thinking about mistranslation. I have not been inside a church in a year. The separation from that Sunday rhythm haunts me at night. I hope there is something to be made of the guilt, birdsong, or perhaps a child skipping. All right, the next poem is a golden shovel, and it's after a Sarah Rule quote that says, I loved her to the point of invention, and so each line in the poem ends on a word from that quote. It's called A Clean House. The drought lasted long enough for me to learn language and movement are queer. I believe both involve approaching that which cannot be captured. In this case, I loved her, and I didn't know how to justify the hours I spent trying to replicate the softness of her neck. Why silence never healed the blisters. I craved water and got dust instead. To me, these hours were sacred, a holy attendance, a religion of desire. 40 days in the desert of wanting to not want her. Let this cup pass from me. There was no point where this felt disembodied. It was in my fingernails and eyelashes, in my joints, tired of aching for her elbows. I was determined to make tender the process of invention. This one's called Gender is the Golden Calf, similarly in this religious tone I'm going with. And it's inspired by Ocean Vuong's quote, "Dearest Father, forgive me, for I have seen." I have always hated pet names except for Dearest. Nobody has called me that, least of all the absent Father in heaven. I am no Samuel. There is no way to forgive my deafness. God doesn't speak to a person like me, all femininity replaced with buzz cuts and flannels. For the burden of mercy is a burn scar and a kneeler, and I want out. Let me be graceless, a lion, a shepherd. I have fasted and cursed and prayed and sang and seen. And then the last poem I'll read here is called Zucchini Bread Parable. One of my friends and I were joking that in the Bible, Jesus will compare just about anything to the kingdom of heaven. And so she said, will you write a poem, a parable about the kingdom of heaven if I give you a random object, and the object was a KitchenAid stand mixer. So here we go. Zucchini bread parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a KitchenAid stand mixer, big and heavy in the best way. Drag the thing from the cupboard and hoist it on the counter. Gather round, there's a mess to be made. All dusted flour, no mistakes. Here, there is no need for high altitude instructions and no admonishing for bits of eggshell in the batter. The kingdom of heaven makes all bad recipes good. It usurps the hand mixer, whisks faster and more consistently too. I suppose consistency is the way to God's heart. A steady hand and a weekly church service. Good night kisses. Giving alms to the poor. The kingdom of heaven aches for a mess though. A powdered sugar explosion and a slippery kitchen floor. There are prayerful hands with blistered knuckles and confessions with jumbled apologies. You cannot bake a cake without spilling flour on the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jillian. That was wonderful. Let's all give love to Jillian.
Beautiful.
Hey, Jillian!
Yay.
So I don't know about everybody else, but I haven't heard quite enough. So I want to ask our finalists and our winner of the Charlotte Mew Prize to talk a little bit about their work. And I'd also invite anyone in the audience, if you have a question for any of our poets in particular, or a general question, you can go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll read it aloud. But my question is the one we're asking ourselves and everyone, but particular to your writing. So how has your writing changed during this year of COVID? And I'm thinking about the quantity, the quality, how much time spent, your writing habits, where you write, any of those things that you'd like to tell us. So let's go backwards and start with Jillian, if that's okay.
That's fine. I used to write really consistently, like pretty much every day. And I, like Risa said when she introduced me, I carry around a notebook and a pen everywhere, and I just jot down things that get stuck in my head. But COVID has brought months of no writing, which is actually how I ended up submitting to this prize in the first place, because I had such a bad case of writer's block that I was like, oh, I might as well submit my work for once. But I had a mentor in college that always said, when you can't write, read. And so I've spent a lot more time reading and catching up on other people's work.
Thank you. SG, what do you have to say?
So I think one of the things that has changed the most during COVID is that I'm writing at home, which is really hard to do with my cat around. But like I'm used to writing like in coffee shops or like at my undergrad's English building. I would like be there all the time just writing. But I did start my MFA during COVID. So I've been writing pretty consistently, like more than I probably would be if we weren't in COVID times, because there's just not much else to do. But yeah, like Risa mentioned earlier, Dinesh Smith came and visited our program, and they gave us a challenge to like write a certain type of form either every day or every week or every other week. So I decided to write a sonnet a day, and it's been going okay. Jillian, I loved your sonnet. It inspired me for my little project I'm doing, but yeah.
And Katherine, what can you tell us about how the COVID period has gone for you?
Well, that is a big question, but in terms of writing, I will say that I have been doing more revision than writing, lots and lots of revision, and that I've also been writing, which I don't remember naming this document but I've been writing what I'm apparently calling poem niblets, which are just like starting, but not following through. So that's kind of where I am, is like not having the follow through, but at least well, follow through on old poems. So I'm making them reasonably ready for submission, and then the new stuff I'm writing is just kind of, I don't know. It's all over the place, but it's not finished for sure.
So we do have one question from the lovely audience, and it is from Joshua Lavender, who has a wonderful name. And he is asking anyone, is there one poet whose work you keep coming back to for inspiration and instruction in craft? And what do you get from it? And anyone who wants to answer this should.
One book that I keep near, well, not now, or else I would show y'all, is Citizen Illegal by Jose Olivares, because he's like such a strong voice in the modern like Chicano poetry movement that's going on. So I find myself returning to him a lot. I'm currently reading a very giant book called Troubling the Line, and it's trans and gender queer poetics. So that's been a good inspiration as well.
It's so hard to pick one. I was like looking at my bookshelf behind me. Some poets that really inspired at least this chapbook, Jericho Brown invented this poetic form called the duplex, and there's one in my book, and it's like a messed up sonnet. And I wrote a bunch of those, most of which I hated, but one ended up in my book. I also love the poet Olivia Gatwood. She writes a lot about like the femme experience of queerness, which I think is really interesting. Trying to think. And also my original foray into poetry was through Tumblr, which isn't the best place for poetry. However, some of my favorite poets are still there to this day. Nameless.
So I don't see any more questions. So I guess that's all. I would like everybody to show your face if you're here, and give all of our poets a big round of applause and love. And I want to thank you, each and every one, for coming today.
Well, Risa, I'm so sorry.
Wait a second, Leah, let Leah talk. Go ahead, Leah.
No, not at all. I just wanted to ask one question of each of the poets, just thinking about the creative process. As you work, do you find that when you finally sit, like you have the inspiration for a piece and you brought things together, and when you write, it comes out in your completion, or do you go through a period of intense revision? Like, how do you work?
I am all about revision. Nothing I turn out on a first draft is going to be worth a dime. So I spend a lot of time on revision. So that's probably actually what takes up most of my brain space, is that rather than actual writing.
I think my MFA is forcing me to revise more than I should, and like ask, like I'm learning what questions to ask myself when I'm alone based on what my professors and classmates say. So I don't know. I guess just like, I don't know, there's too much to even like say right now, but of like the different kinds of questions and stuff I've been considering now in my revision process. But yeah, that's definitely something that I need to get more disciplined about, I suppose.
I think it depends on the poem. I always write my first drafts handwritten. I can't write on the computer, and then I have to transfer them to the computer. So in the process of typing up what I've written, that's where most of my revision happens. I have a bad habit of getting really emotionally attached to my poems and then not wanting to revise them. So I'm definitely working on that, accepting constructive criticism.
I plead guilty to that myself. So I don't see anything else in the chat. Does somebody else want to open their mic and say anything? We seem to be doing fine. With
I just wanted to respond very briefly to what Jillian just said about handwritten first drafts. Handwritten is definitely the way to go. I have gotten a lot of use out of a typewriter. instead of moving to a computer, because the computer kind of can vary the revision process. But I love putting a draft through the typewriter and then slapping it on a clipboard and going to work with a pen.
So, anyone else, feel free. It's nice to have a discussion. It's funny, I grew up certainly in an era when we didn't have computers, and I love writing poetry on the computer. That's really the way I do it. Anyone else?
I'd like to say something. Yeah. I feel very strongly that revision is overrated. I think that the longer you write poems, haha, I'm making you laugh, huh? Sorry, Kat, but the longer you write, like let's say you write for like 30 years or something, you write so many poems that when you first write them, it's almost very close to the final draft because you've become practiced. You know how to write slowly. You write slowly enough that you're almost like revising as you're writing. So I don't spend like forever revising most of my poems. However, some of them, every once in a while, one comes along where it goes through like years of revision. But I did write some poems like back in the 1970s that I somehow managed to save just as I had first written them. And thank God I did, because from my perspective now, I think they're just fine, just the way they are. So I hope you could hear what I said.
You actually held together, the sound held together better on that than in the past. So that was good. But I also, I tend to revise to the point where I will submit something to a journal, and then if they accept it, I often have like 3 new versions. And so then I get all stressed about whether or not the version that they took is the version that's best, and whether it's inappropriate to ask about them reading alternate versions. And so yeah, it's a blessing and a curse for sure, Mary. I wish that I could just let it go, but it's compulsive.
I do a lot of revision. I enjoy revision, I think, more than writing. And what I find, the reason I revise is not necessarily craft. It's more certain things don't belong together, and I have to move them into another poem. And then I always have to query my work and ask myself, well, what am I trying to say here? What does this poem want to say? Because a lot of times I've gone off on some tangent. So I enjoy revising. So it's okay to do it any way we do it. I have also written many poems that were just the way they are. I didn't change a thing. So that happens. I feel great when it does, but that's not the usual for me. I'm going to just wait 1 second, see if anybody else pops up and wants to say anything. I've certainly enjoyed these readings. I'm so glad that so many people were able to come. And yeah, somebody just put a note in. He struggles with tangents too. And I really feel like I want to congratulate the 3 of you and the 4 of you, because Sarah too, on these wonderful works. And we're just very proud to have them and be able to offer them to the communities of people who want to read them. And as I said before, you can buy them at our store, and we hope you'll shop there and look at some of the other things that we have. And that's all.
Woo!
Yay.
Thank you. It was great.
Haley, thank you for coming. Your bookshelves are beautiful.
Thank you so much. I hope to
So
fill them.
jealous.
Yeah.
Look at those shelves.
I know, right? I
My
noticed
heart
them
just
as
broke.
soon as I saw you.
Wow.
Of course, I have to have it perfectly balanced to show everything off in my Zoom.
Wow.
I was trying to figure out how I could get my doll houses in the shot, but it wasn't possible.
Oh man.
Yeah, but they're really cool. They're my favorite. I was like, how cool would it be to just have my doll house chilling behind me? But I didn't have a tree instead.
Thank you, Risa and Mary.
I thought all of it, you all read so beautifully. It was just so moving and such excellent work. I'm just really, really happy with your readings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were worried like me, but we didn't go too fast.
No, everyone read beautifully.
No. Well,
I mean, you have to think about slowing down to get to about the middle point of the poem and take a breath, but everyone read beautifully. I don't know if I did, but the three of you did.
That was lovely.
It would be great to hear Sarah's English accent.
Jillian, that's a beautiful picture on your wall.
Oh, that's me.
I'm not surprised, but I just love the scene, the scene.
Yeah. I had long hair in that photo, so it's a little scary, but I'm living in my parents' house and I'm haunted by like the ghosts of my past self.
The whole thing.
Risa,
So
too bad you didn't read Sarah's
a few of us if people want to say anything. Pardon?
Well, too bad you didn't read Sarah's poem. I missed her. She's a fantastic reader with that accent. I just love it.
I'm so sad. Do we know if she's okay?
I hadn't heard from her in a while, and then she responded to my asking, if she was going to be able to make it, and she said she's been just very sick, and I don't know anything really about her health problems, so I don't know if it's some episodic kind of problem. But she got back to me a couple times between 2 days ago and today, just saying she was really it was okay for me to tell people that she was not able to read for health problems. So I got her permission for that. And, just thanking me for reading some of her poems and wishing everybody else the best. So, I'll stay in touch with her. We'll stay in touch with her, but I don't really know anything more than that she was really too sick this go round to read.
Well, thank you, everyone. I've got to hop off, but...
Yeah, y'all were great. Loved sharing the virtual stage with y'all.
So good. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.